The following special presentation coverage is brought to you by the Government Channel, a service of the City of Framingham.
Broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Could everybody give Katie another round of applause? She did a great job. So it's my job to welcome all of you to Framingham. I am State Senator Karen Spilka. Thank you. Thank you. Back at you, I have to say. Thank you for being here. We all are here for a very important person. But I just want to say, I know some people think, I might be a little biased, but some people think Boston is sort of the hub of the state of Massachusetts. But I would strongly suggest that it's the Metro West. We have it all here, and there's always, to coin a phrase, more to explore. We have so many jewels here in Metro West, and so much going on from Framingham State, Mass Bay, to our cultural institutions, to our theater, our arts, our universities, our natural resources. There's just so much. It's a beautiful area with a very high quality of life. So I welcome you to the Hub, and I look forward to hearing Senator Markey, of course. I would like to acknowledge a few folks that are here. Bob Jubenville, our terrific Governor's Council. Welcome, Bob. And we have several of our state representatives that I work with so closely. And I just want to say, Metro West is incredibly lucky to have such a tremendous group in the legislature. We work really closely together, and we work to get things done. We work together, whether it be those that are here now are Democrats, but we reach across the aisle as necessary as well. It's not what you will hear like what happens in Washington. The states are taking a big lead right now, and we are at the forefront of so many important issues. So we have Representative Chris Walsh, Representative Dave Linsky, Representative Alice Peisch, Representative Carolyn Dykema, Representative Danielle Gregoire, Representative Carmine Gentile. We also have former State Senator Dave Mignani here. And we have many city councilors and school committee members, which I will let Mayor Spicer introduce them when she comes up here. So I am tasked to give like a little warm-up for Ed Markey, which isn't always easy to do for Ed, because let's face it, Ed needs no introduction. It's true. But I was tasked with a job, so I will try. He has relentlessly represented the people of the Massachusetts 5th Congressional District, and he has fearlessly fought for all Americans in his 40 years in Congress, first in the House and now in the Senate. The son of a Malden milkman, he was just 29 when he upset the traditional balance of power and won his seat in the U.S. House. Since then, he has been a successful champion of issues that matter most to the people of Massachusetts, including environmental stewardship, clean energy, consumer protection, immigration, and privacy, just to name a few that Ed has championed. Ed Markey clearly is a man of many, many talents. We are grateful for his ability to negotiate federal policy, standing his ground when he needs to, and compromising when it gets the job done. But Ed is also known for something else, which I think if you have heard Ed, you know this. How many tens of hundreds have we heard? His ability to communicate using acronyms. He has truly a unique gift. So in honor of today, I'd like to retell a little piece of Ed's story using acronyms. Let's start at the very beginning. Son of a milkman, do you know what M-I-L-K really stands for? All of these years, it stands for Markey is loyal and kind-hearted. After his childhood in Malden, Ed attended Boston College and then Boston College Law School, BCLS. At that time, Ed was a BCLS, a budding champion learning statutes. One of the most famous stories about Ed's careers is when he was still in the Massachusetts legislature. I think we all have heard this story, when the speaker was unhappy with a position that Ed took, and he put Ed's desk in the hall. Ed famously said at that time, "They may tell me where to sit, but nobody tells me where I stand." So I declare that from now on, the word desk, D-E-S-K, when it's associated with Ed Markey, should stand for don't expect senseless kowtowing. Ed is also well known for his work on broadband access and net neutrality. Because of his hard work, NET really stands for fighting for those that need equal technology. During his time in Congress, Ed has developed a reputation for being a stalwart advocate for clean energy and against climate change. How many of you know that? I mean, Ed is always at the forefront of this. So Ed is as green as it comes. So when he fights GREEN, Ed is gathering resistance to environmental egregiousness and neglect. Finally, and I will spare you a whole lot more, Ed has fought hard for consumer protection. To that end, I declare that protect, P-R-O-T-E-C-T, should mean preserving rights of tomorrow's evolving consumers today. I could go on, but yes, I will spare you and end here. I think you get the idea. In fact, nobody will be as good at making up the acronyms as Ed Markey. So what I will say and end with, that I'm glad that we have someone so heartfelt, so creative, and so responsive serving in the U.S. Senate. As we face a really uncertain time right now and an uncertain future, I'm glad that we have Ed's steady hand and open heart guiding us at the federal level. So I would like to personally thank Ed for all of his hard work and for not only being a great colleague, but being a friend to all of us. So at this point, I would like to also introduce Framingham's new, although it's 6 weeks, so maybe you're a veteran now, Mayor Yvonne Spicer. She took office 6 weeks ago when Framingham began a city, so she's helping to lead the charge of the transition along with the city councilors and the school committee and all the employees and all the residents of Framingham. She's gotten a terrific head start in working really hard, and it's been a real boon for the city of Framingham. So I want to thank her publicly and bring up, and please give a round of applause for Framingham's first Mayor, Yvonne Spicer.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. I will be brief, as I would want to welcome my home team, our city councilors that are with us today. Charlie Sizitsky, Pam Richardson, Adam Steiner, Michael Cannon, Michael Rossi, Marguerite Shepard, and our Counselor at Large, Cheryl Tully-Stoll. Our other folks that I want to acknowledge, Holliston's team that is here, school committee, Margaret DeVoe, Cynthia Listenek, and if I missed anyone that is here, I'm sorry, Beverly Hugo, school committee member, Beverly Hugo. And if I missed anyone, please stand. Oh, great, I didn't. Well, I want to say good afternoon and welcome our senator, who doesn't need an introduction to Framingham. I've lived here for 32 years, and for a portion of that time, he has been my representative and yours as well. We have the good fortune of not only him representing us at the Capitol Hill, but being a tireless advocate for us. Senator Spilka did a great job conveying some of his hard work. So I won't reiterate this, but it's interesting that he should be in Framingham on this day, which happens to be one of my favorite authors' birthday, Toni Morrison. Today is her birthday. And Toni Morrison once said, which is very fitting, today is her 87th birthday. As you enter positions of power and trust, dream a little bit before you think. That simply means to always have a vision of the change you wish to make before you act. One of the things I can honestly say, Ed Markey has been that change for not only here in Framingham, but across our Commonwealth. And without further ado, I want to welcome our Senator, Edward J. Markey.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all, and thank you all for coming out here on a Sunday afternoon. I thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for welcoming me to City Hall here in Framingham. You can now say that that is the case, and we thank you for being an inspirational figure, not just for Framingham, but for the whole state of Massachusetts and our country. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you for your leadership. To Senator Spilka, thank you for all of your great leadership. It's always great when a region can have the chairperson of Ways and Means, Karen Spilka, come from here, because it really does help a lot when you have someone in that kind of a position, and she just does an absolutely fantastic job for Metro West, and I have known her throughout the entirety of her career. But the same thing is true for your entire delegation up on Beacon Hill. It is just absolutely an all-star cast of people, and they have already been introduced once, but I just want to go through the list and also note that Chris Walsh did come here a little bit earlier, but he just felt a little bit under the weather. But just know that he was going to be here. But I thank you, David Linsky, for being here. We thank you for what you're doing on gun control up in the State House as well. Carbon Gentile, thank you so much for all of your great service here. To Carolyn Dykma, my friend, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your great work. For Alice Peisch, thank you for being here as well. Danielle Gregoire, Danielle, thank you. I went over and visited Marlborough. I spent a day with her over there. It is absolutely happening in Marlborough, so thank you for coming over here today. Bob Jubenville, thank you for what you do as a governor's counselor. Marilyn Devaney is here as well. And I see a lot of school committee and city council now and Board of Selectmen people who are here. Thank you so much for making Metro West almost a model for the rest of the country in terms of the balance that is created between job creation and the responsibilities we have to everyone in the community. People in other states, they don't quite understand that we do believe in capitalism. And we actually have out here one of the lowest unemployment rates in the United States of America, but we believe in capitalism with a conscience, which is something that Donald Trump just does not understand about the state of Massachusetts. So we'll just start with guns. We'll start with hopefully is now going to build it up into a children's crusade in our country so that the response to the National Rifle Association comes from the youngest people in our country who have a right to be able to go to school without worrying whether or not someone who should not be able to buy a gun can buy a gun which only belongs on the battlefields of the world and not on the streets of our country. And that these children begin now to help lead all of us on a crusade, which will turn NRA into not relevant anymore in American politics, huh? So that's a good acronym. And that should become an operational acronym, huh? For all of us. We have one of the tightest set of gun laws in the country, and we also have one of the lowest rates of gun fatalities in the country as well. There is a direct correlation. It's a public health issue. And the place where the Framingham Heart Study began is a place that understands prevention, understands the correlation that exists between good safety gun laws being on the books and the reduction in the likelihood that people are going to be harmed by them. So I know that David Linsky has legislation now to further tighten the laws. I have introduced with Dianne Feinstein from California and with Dick Blumenthal from Connecticut, nearly identical legislation. And we need to pass it here in Massachusetts because we go first ordinarily, and we're only 2% of America's population, but we're not an ordinary 2%. We are not just the Bay State, we are the brain state, and we know what has to happen if we are going to be successful on these issues. So, so from my perspective, we are going to have to force an historic debate on gun control on the floor of the United States Senate this year. It is an issue that has gone unattended to for too long, and we must lead on it. Next, and by the way, we'll have cameras here for anyone who wants to ask questions as well. But I'll just try to get on a few issues that I think we should talk about. Senator Spilka mentioned a few of them. Mayor Spicer worked over at the Museum of Science before she became the mayor. Now, what do we all have in common? Before we're at the age of 10 or 11, regardless of our religion, regardless of where we live, we're taken to the Museum of Science. That's all part of our growing up here in Metro West or Massachusetts in general. And at the Immaculate Conception Grammar School, Sister Carita would say, there's no conflict between religion and science. In fact, science is the answer to our prayers, because it allows us to understand what is happening on our planet. And so what Donald Trump did in pulling us out of the Paris Climate Agreement is an absolute assault upon science, who we are, what we believe in, and what we know has to happen if we are, again, to put the preventative health measures in place for the planet. The planet is running a fever. There are no emergency rooms for planets, and we have to unleash a revolution of wind and solar and biomass and all-electric vehicles and energy efficiency so that we create it here, and then we can spread it across the planet. So to the extent to which every single day under this new administration, Scott Pruitt is at EPA, turning it into every polluter's ally. Rick Perry's at the Department of Energy. The Secretary of the Interior has now authorized Rick Zinke drilling for oil off of the coast of Massachusetts. It's almost like the perfect opposite of having John Kerry as Secretary of State, having John Holdren from Harvard being the science advisor, having Ernie Moniz from MIT and Boston College being the Secretary of Energy, and having Gina McCarthy from UMass Boston be the head of the EPA. They've almost figured out how to have someone who doesn't believe in anything that these Massachusetts people had brought in the preceding generation down to Washington to create a pathway for the reduction of greenhouse gases on this planet. And so our job, again, is going to have to be in Massachusetts that we stand up for science, we stand up for clean energy, we stand up for this revolution, and we ensure that we continue to lead. And my goal on the Environment Committee is to block every single bad idea that Trump has on the environment from ever becoming the law of our country. So then you go to health care, and inside of the health care bill, inside of the tax bill, they were able to repeal the individual mandate. We keep it here in Massachusetts. That's just who we are. We invented, essentially, the framework for the Affordable Care Act. But their intention is nationally to undermine it to a point at which it just deteriorates across the whole country. So in this new budget framework, they just announced last week a $1.4 trillion cut in Medicaid over the next 10 years, while also laying out a framework that would have something on the range of $7 trillion in defense spending. Well, you know, over the portal of the Boston Public Library, it says the best defense of a nation is the education of its people. And the way we view that is that we have to provide health care and education to every child in our country. We have to make sure they get a well-educated, healthy start. And so the one thing that is not going to make us safer is $1.5 trillion of additional nuclear weapons. We are not going to be made safer when we already have enough nuclear weapons to blow Russia and North Korea and China off the map 20 times over right now. All we can do is just make the rubble bounce higher with the additional nuclear weapons that would be landing. And so to the extent to which the president has these crazy budget priorities, he actually cuts at what it is that makes us special out here in Metro West, which has which results in an unemployment rate for Framingham being 2.5% for all the communities. You can just say 2, 2, 2, 2 in that range for unemployment. It's because there's a plan here, and the plan is an investment in all of the things that ensure that we become a healthier, more prosperous economy. David Mignani knows that. All of you know this. And so for me, this is the moment here where the president wants a massive military buildup, tax breaks for the upper 1 percentile, while cutting Medicare, Social Security, and all the rest of these programs dramatically. In fact, zeroing out the National Endowment of the Arts and Humanities, because we can't afford that. But tell that to Katie Hewlett, who just sang the national anthem from Framingham High School. Didn't she do a great job? do we really want to cut? Do we really want to cut and zero out the national endowments for the arts and humanities? Just absolutely crazy. Let me give you some numbers in the budget that he just announced last week. 25% cut for the Environmental Protection Agency, 25% cut for the State Department, 18% cut in transportation, 15% cut in the Department of Interior, 14% cut in housing and urban development, 10% cut in labor, 5% cut in education, 1% cut in the Justice Department. But don't worry, because the Defense Department is getting a 14% increase in their budget at the expense of all of these other programs. So we want a strong defense. We believe in a strong defense in our country. But you can't give a huge tax break to the wealthiest people in the country and then say we can't afford all of these social programs because now we have to fund a huge defense increase. You know, the president has a remarkable ability to harness voluminous amounts of information to defend knowingly erroneous premises. And the single heart of their erroneous premise is that you can have huge tax breaks and increase in defense spending and not have a dramatic impact on all of the rest of the programs that go right to the heart of the investment in our country. And healthcare is right at the center of it. We're up to 98% of all people in Massachusetts who have healthcare. In education, we're number one in math. We're number one in math, verbal, and science at the 4th, 8th, and 10th grades. And we would be, as a separate 6.6 million person country, we'd be right behind Singapore and Finland in the world. And you know the thing about us? We're not happy with our educational system, even though we're number one. We're not happy with our healthcare system, even though we're number one. That's who we are. And that's why we have such a fantastic delegation here working on all these issues up in the State House, pursuant to your instruction as to what you want to see for Metro West and for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in terms of what we represent. So I will, it's just so many issues, so little time. It's like a Trump a day, if you know what I mean. It's just a new issue every single day. But so Thursday was a bad day. Thursday was DACA and Florida, huh? Two really bad things with two terrible responses from Donald Trump to both of them. Terrible. So these dreamers are here. Framingham is a perfectly diverse community. It kind of represents the aspirations for the country as to what is possible, what can happen. A very high percentage of African Americans, of Latinos, of Asians, of people from other countries in a city of 70,000 with a 2.5% unemployment rate and a very low crime rate, huh? We can do this, okay? We can do this. And what the president is now saying is that these young people, by the way, the deadline is now March 5th. That's when their protections expire. Just a couple of weeks. So the 700,000, with 7,000 of them coming from Massachusetts, there is like a political bullseye on them. And the president lobbied hard on Thursday of last week to tell Republican senators that he did not want them to vote for that bill. We had 8 Republicans, but then he just drew the line. We needed 60 in order to save them, and we only could get 8 of them. We needed 11 Republicans, 12, 13, 14. I believe there were 20 Republicans who wanted to vote for it, but the president just put out a hit order on that solution to the problem. So we have a moral responsibility as a country to ensure that we do protect these young people. They should not be sent back to countries that they did not grow up in. They should not have to leave this country or have their parents leave this country without any protections that we provide to them pursuant to Emma Lazarus's poem on the bottom of the Statue of Liberty. That is who we are. That's why we're all here. When my when my grandfather and grandmother got off the boat from Ireland in the 20th century, it wasn't up in the scoreboard that their grandson would be a United States Senator, huh? People don't leave these countries because they're doing great in those countries. It's almost a rule for who leaves, right? The countries of their origin. They're here not because they're malingerers, but because they are being oppressed, because they're not being given opportunities. That's why they come here. And so we should take this generation of dreamers and protect them and encourage them as a key part of the 21st century. When I ran for the Senate, you know, you grow up where your mother tells your father he's going to live. And so my father was from Lawrence and my mother from Malden. And so I grew up in Malden. My father drove a truck for the Hood Milk Company. He grew up on the first floor of a triple-decker in Lawrence. 5 children, mother and father, in the shadow of the old South Mill. So my father grew up, graduated from the vocational program at Lawrence High School. That's where my father went to high school. And what I decided to do when I announced for the Senate, because I hadn't been up there recently, so I rang the doorbell at 88 Phillips Street, first floor, 3-decker, to see who lives there now, where my father grew up, with all of my uncles and aunts and my grandmother and grandfather in Lawrence. And the door opened, and it was a Dominican family with their children. And the accents were different, but the aspirations the same for those children that those parents had, as existed for the Markeys coming out of Lawrence, out of that first floor. So I think that's the spirit that we have to try to capture and have come from Massachusetts and continually be directed towards President Trump. And that's what Elizabeth Warren and Catherine Clark and I try to do every single day down on the floor of the House and Senate, is just deliver those sentiments of who we are in Massachusetts. So maybe what I could do here is I'll just throw in one more issue. There are so many. Net neutrality. This is one of the only places in the world where you can just say net neutrality gets applause, okay? That's how much more sophisticated we are than most parts of the country. But net neutrality, another way of describing net neutrality is just kind of non-discrimination. So that's what we believe in. We believe in no discrimination based upon race, no discrimination based upon gender. But we also believe no discrimination online, no discrimination no matter how small your voice is, how small your startup software company might be, that you will be protected. And so the president, through his Federal Communications Commission, took the net neutrality laws off the books in December. And so what I did 4 weeks ago was announce that I am going to demand a vote on the floor of the United States Senate on the repeal of net neutrality. And I need 51 votes. I need 51 votes. And I already have 49 Democrats and Susan Collins on board, okay? So what I am going to do is mount this incredible national campaign around restoring the net neutrality rules. We're going to need you to be part of this. 22 million people went online at the Federal Communications Commission saying, do not repeal net neutrality. 22 million people. The next highest of all time was only like 4 million for any issue at any agency at any time. You know, if you're like a millennial, you know, net neutrality is like a constitutional right. Okay? There is no world within which they have lived that doesn't have this as the principle, right, for their relationship with this incredible technology. So this is going to be a huge battle, and our intent is to have it like come out of Massachusetts and out of California and then sweep across the whole country, because we need Congress to hear from everyone on this issue. Congress is a stimulus response institution, and there's nothing more stimulating like 10 million people calling into the House and the Senate saying, I care about net neutrality. And if you're out here and you're wondering, what is it? Yeah, we have these incredible biotechs out here. Danielle was just telling me about the expansion in Marlborough of the biotech industry. But it's true for every community that is out here. That's who we are. We're biotech. But we're also this internet revolution. Hundreds, thousands of smaller companies whose names nobody knows, all starting their own little company. In 2 years ago, 50% of all venture capital in America went to software and internet startups. Companies whose names nobody knows. 50% of all venture capital. That's who we are. That's why our unemployment rate stays so low. It's biotech. It's clean tech. We now have 100,000 people working in clean tech in Massachusetts. It's now one of the top 10 employers in our state. Biotech, right? So this internet, biotech, clean tech set of interrelationships along with healthcare is absolutely driving our economy. So there's going to be a vote. It's called a Congressional Review Act. It was put on the books by Newt Gingrich in 1995 so that they could overturn all of Bill Clinton's rules. Well, now that law sits there so we can overturn Donald Trump's rules that he has at his agencies, huh? So that's the goal, and we thank all of you for being here. And if anyone wants to go to the microphones, we have Nolan over here and Rory right here, and you could just go over and please stand up and ask away any question you would like to have answered. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator Markey. Thank you for doing this wonderful town hall event. But you know, one thing that always made
and where are you from, sir?
I'm from Ashland, sir.
Oh, good, beautiful.
One of the things that always made this country great is we respected our elders and we cherished our children. I feel that something's out of whack with that. Nowadays, you're in fear of your children being murdered, and let that resonate with you, murdered when they go to school. We have an opiate crisis, which is the largest health crisis of our lifetime. You talk about unemployment. There's a teenage unemployment in this country. There is a growing autism and mental health crisis that we have in this country. I ask you here today to be the senator who goes back to Washington, hopefully next week, and rallies the other 99 senators, and we put a priority back on our youth in this country. It's too important not to do that. I feel with the crippling college loan debt that we have and the burdens that are now on children with social media and the fact that they can go to school and be murdered, and I want to keep using that word because it has to resonate with people. You as a leader of this state and as this country have to put partisan politics aside, and you need to fix this. And I'm here today to ask you to be that leader. Thank you.
And thank you, sir, very much. So, and again, I agree with you. I started with gun control because it is a public health epidemic. We need prevention. In fact, I introduced a bill 7 years ago, 65432, to have the Centers for Disease Control do a study over the relationship between guns and health in America, and I was blocked and blocked and blocked and blocked from even having a vote. But the new head of the Department of Health and Human Services on Friday announced, much to my shock, that they are now going to begin the study, the public health study of the relationship between guns and our society. So I introduced the bill year after year on this issue. Education, we shouldn't be cutting the education budget. We should be trying to figure out how to make community college free in the United States of America. So it's just a continuation through high school of the educational opportunities which people have. My wife, 33 years ago, I met a woman. It was like, I'm an Irish Catholic politician from Massachusetts, and I met the pluperfect opposite, a Jewish doctor from California. And so now we've been together for 33 years. She's a career public health service doctor. She retired as a 2-star admiral in the public health service. She ran all of women's health during the Clinton administration for the whole country. But the one thing I do know, sir, is that, and she taught me this, is that children are only 20% of the population, but they're 100% of our future. And if you don't, and that, as Ralph Waldo Emerson said, that health is the first wealth, and if we are not investing in the earliest years, then there are going to be big problems in terms of the long-term outlook for these young people. So I agree with you 100%. And while many of these Republicans shed crocodile tears about how much they care about all these young people, you can't be simultaneously be calling for a slashing of health care and educational programs in our country. You can't be turning the Congress over to the NRA in terms of the safety of the schools. So I am with you. And I'll just give you one. When I got to the Senate, what they did was this. A national journal took all 100 senators, and they analyzed each one of our records. How many bills are now law that each senator could be given credit for? So Orrin Hatch was like at 800. Barbara Mikulski was at 700. So I was number 8 out of the 100 senators because they gave me credit for my career in the House of Representatives, 510 laws. Now, by definition, I had a Republican every single time. All of your state legislators who are here, they all know this. This is how it works. You're constantly crossing over and trying to find people who you can partner with. But this is a toxic political environment within which we have been working. And Donald Trump likes it that way. And so can I tell you the truth? I've been doing this a long time. This is the most energized I've ever been in my entire career. Donald Trump gets me up every single day to fight, to fight this toxicity, political toxicity, this crisis of democracy, which he is helping to create in our country. So I'm agreeing with you, sir, and I will take your message back down to Washington with me when I go back on Tuesday morning. Yes, sir.
I'm Jim Markey from Marlboro.
Can you just speak up just a little?
Yes. I'm from Marlboro. Simple question. The system for gun checking backgrounds seems to keep falling apart. What can we do?
Okay, so why can't we just have background checks? Why can't we at least find out who buys these guns? Because you can go on Instagram and buy an Insta-gun. The terrorist watch list, like 93% of all Americans say people on the terrorist watch list should not be able to buy guns in our country. We can't even get a vote on the floor of the Senate on that issue. The bump stock issue, that way in which that man took an assault weapon and turned it into a machine gun with the bump stock, we can't have a vote on that on the Senate floor. So I'm agreeing with you, sir. It's common sense that we know who wants to buy this gun and why. In Massachusetts, you have to go to the police chief. We have a system here that has a check at the local level where the police chief gets to find out who wants the gun. But nationwide, that's not the case. And because of the porous nature of the borders in our country, people can just buy it in another place and take it to a state that has better gun safety laws. So I'm agreeing with you, sir, 100%. No one wants to take hunting rifles away from people. No one wants to take guns which people have always been able to purchase in our country. But when we have no laws which are on the books that have a mandatory background check, then it basically ties the hands of law enforcement officials in our country who otherwise would be in a position to be able to protect the rest of the people in the community, while at the same time allowing people who legally should be able to own guns to be able to purchase them. So I'm hopeful that this Children's Crusade, which is about to begin, is going to be the key turning point in the history of this issue. But I've been disappointed my whole career. Disappointed my whole career in terms of how powerful the NRA is. It's just an incredible force of political nature that has blocked anything from happening throughout the entirety of my entire career. And even when we passed the assault weapon ban in 1994, it was with a 10-year expiration date. Okay, so by 2004, once again, those protections were not on the books any longer. And so this is just a statement of their power, and it's going to require an uprising of the American people, finally. And we will reach that point. The tipping point is going to happen. We hope it's the Florida school. But there'll be another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And at some point, we will reach that critical mass, and then we'll be able to put those safeguards in place. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's David Pasternak.
Can you just speak up just a little?
David Pasternak. I'm from Framingham. I'll use the mic stronger. While I am very much sympathetic to all the applause lines and believe in what you say, and I am thankful for those people who ask the why, what gets my applause is the how. And I've only heard two things, maybe three, that answer the how. Again, I want to hear more of that, particularly for us as well as yourself, because I know I live in a Democratic state. So this state is going to go Democratic almost no matter what. I will vote that way, but as for the rest, how? Thank you.
All issues go through three phases: political education, political activation, political implementation. So for many of the issues that I am speaking about here today, we'll put gun control aside. That's a special issue that has been particularly impervious to any political solution over the years. What has happened in the last year and a half, or just a year now, he's only been president for a year, is that issues around which there had been a consensus that had been built, let's say NIH funding, research for finding the cure for the diseases which affect every family regardless of party affiliation, that in his first budget last year he put in a 20% cut for NIH research funding. So we worked very hard with Republicans over the last year on that issue. Clearly, we're the largest per capita recipient of NIH research. We get $2.5 billion a year that comes to Massachusetts to lead the research on finding the cure for cancer, for Alzheimer's, diabetes. So in this budget that we just finished 10 days ago, not only was it not cut by 20%, but we actually added $1 billion for this year and next year to NIH because we tried to work as hard as we could on a bipartisan basis to break down those divisions. But again, it was not what Trump wanted. It was not what Mick Mulvaney, the head of his Office of Management and Budget, wanted. But we had to fight very hard just by working together. And that's what your excellent delegation does. Carolyn and Danielle and Alice and David, Karen Spilka do on a daily basis. They're trying to find solutions to problems. That's who we are. That's what makes Massachusetts work. People are trying to work with Charlie Baker, the governor, the Democrats who are here. That's just the way it is. You have to try to find a way. You know, you can't allow the state to be paralyzed. You have to try to find a way. And the same thing is true down in Washington. We can't allow this man, you know, to poison the political system. When Jeff Flake, the senator from Arizona, started to attack him, he just attacked him back so severely that he's not even running for re-election in Arizona. That's in his own party. So all I can tell you is that's all I do with every waking moment. I try to find ways of working with Republicans in order to find solutions to the problems that affect every family. So we want to come back over here. Yes.
Hi, hi, Senator Markey.
Can you just speak up just a little?
Sorry. Hi, Senator Markey. Thank you so much for coming out to Metro West. My name is Helen. I live in Natick, and I have had multiple sclerosis for 20 years. When I first was diagnosed and treated with for MS, the drugs that I took only cost $15,000 a year. And over the past 20 years, the multiple sclerosis drugs have increased in number to 16, but the prices have gone up astronomically to over $80,000 a year. And what I'm most concerned about is that these are medications that we take for our lifetime, and they prevent the accumulation and long-term disability. And what has been an issue for me is that in recent years, health insurance companies have found sneaky ways to deny coverage or not cover it at all. And then not only that, they have done other things by increasing drug co-payments as much as 20% of actual drug costs, which brings up to $16,000 or more a year. So what I'd like to say is I'm very concerned about the drug manufacturers. What tactics are they using? I've heard of this shadow pricing, which I'm very concerned about. When new drugs come on the market, the biotech companies and companies develop them want to make their money back, but the older drugs that have been around for a while have recouped their costs. But these drugs continue to go up in price, and what I'm most concerned about, the next letter that's going to come in the mail, is my health insurance going to deny my coverage or make my co-payment $16,000. And I have one goal in life, is the word W, to continue walking. And it's very important to me that not only drug manufacturers stand up for what they're doing, but health insurances take responsibility for their actions.
Okay,
and we are 14,000 people here with MS in Massachusetts, and we really need your help to make sure that this is brought up.
Good, thank you, and thank you for coming. Thank you for telling your story here. Thank you. And thank you for telling the story of MS. The Mass Medical Association sent a delegation down to meet with me last week in my office in Washington. So it was 20 different physicians, and this just makes your point. The cost of insulin is not a new technology, not a new breakthrough. The cost of insulin to a patient has increased tenfold in 10 years. Tenfold. With no new breakthroughs in the technology, okay? So that's just plain wrong. We know it's wrong. There was a story in the Globe last week that said there had been, over a couple-year period, like a 23% increase in cost of healthcare in the state due to increase in drug prices. So again, we're proud of where we are as a healthcare system, but we're not going to be able to maintain access to healthcare if we continue to see the spiraling drug costs. So we need to find some system. And the one hope that I have, and I don't know what he means, but Donald Trump actually said in his State of the Union address 2 weeks ago, and I was sitting next to Bernie Sanders watching the State of the Union address, and obviously when you're sitting next to Bernie, you really have to curb your enthusiasm for any response to anything that Donald Trump says. But he said his goal this year is to pass legislation that controls drug costs. And all Democrats got up and half the Republicans sat down. Okay? So that was the one issue where every Democrat got up. But maybe, just maybe, this can be the year, although like everything else, we never know if his actions are going to accompany his words in terms of what he's going to do. But I think you put your finger one of the biggest, if not the central issue in the healthcare system in our country in terms of controlling costs so it's affordable for everyone. Yes, sir.
Hi, Kevin Shea from Hopkinton. This is a great country. What an experience today. I'm not a gun owner. I'm not a member of the NRA, but I've been trying to figure out this gun violence problem, and I've been doing some research, and there are 5 to 10 million AR-15s in the hands of Americans right now. There are 300 million guns and rifles, and this is estimates from the NSF, which is the National Shooting Sports Foundation. And there are over 20 million residences in the United States with a weapon, and over 36 million adults have access to that weapon. I really think we're barking up the wrong tree by going after the NRA, and I don't think that it's a good use of whatever resources we have to fight this battle, because what we really need is mental health services. And if I can just finish, 37 times the police went to that young man's home, okay? How many times did the teachers in his school express?
Okay. Let him finish, please. Yes.
We don't hire police officers to be social workers. We don't hire teachers to be social workers. Unfortunately, we don't hire enough social workers and community outreach people. That's what we need. We don't need another law. We need mental health funding.
Okay, no, I thank you, sir. So, all right, so when I met my wife 33 years ago, she was the chief of behavioral medicine at the National Institutes of Health at SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Agency. That's where she worked. So she began on our first date to start to explain this whole issue of mental health, substance abuse, and the way she phrased it to me that first night, I didn't forget it. It was, first you need the ideation, that is the way you think about the world, and second is you need access to the means of the instrumentality, the means then to act out on whatever it is that gets into your brain that you think now is something that you should be acting out. So I am agreeing with you in terms of access to mental health services, which is why the repeal of the Affordable Care Act would be one of the most dangerous things we ever did, because it would pull out the rug from millions of families who now gain access to the mental health services which they need in our country. And that funding should only be increased for mental health services. There should be parity. There should be a full recognition of the fact that that disease is just the same as any physical disease which affects families in our country. That's one of the things you learn after 33 years with a Jewish psychiatrist, okay? I know this. But I also know that we have too many guns. We don't have enough control over who can purchase the guns. So I agree with you, sir, but I think we have to do both, okay? I just think that in order to really ensure that we solve this problem, we have to deal with both sides of the equation, and if we do it, we're going to see a dramatic decline, because there's no other explanation for why our country is the highest in the world, why our country, in any industrialized country in the world, has gun fatalities, injuries, which are so much lower than ours, okay? So it's the absence of a full funding and attention paid to both sides of the equation. So I thank you for your point, and I will keep it in my mind and be using it as part of the argument for why we have to have no repeal of the Affordable Care Act, and no cutbacks in Medicaid funding, because Medicaid is the way in which people gain access to health care in our country. Yes, sir.
Dana Aaron from Wayland.
Can you just speak up a little? Yeah.
Yes, Dana Aaron from Wayland. Senator, you talked about solutions earlier.
Yeah.
And I want to, just by way of intro, what I don't like about our federal government is the same thing I don't like about our news. We're told what is happening, but there are no solutions. Kind of a waste of time. On Trump, if the Democrats want votes in November, they won't beat Trump on being Trump. His base, his approval ratings, and a lot of silence speaks pretty loud. People like where the economy is, we're not in many wars, and they could care less about his sex life, his lies, and his bullying. My parents once told me that if you complain, come up with some solutions. I have two right now solutions. First, the Democrats should begin their November elections now, and they should forget all the bells and whistles and make a 5-point promise. If you give us the House and Senate, 1, we'll send a bill to the president that outlaws AR-15s and other assault weapons. 2, reopen science and our conversations with the world that we are back into climate change and want to rejoin the global community in the Paris Agreement. 3, support Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian meddling in our elections and whatever else he finds. 4, let's take care of the dreamers. Number 5, tell our seniors that Medicare and Social Security are there and will be there for them if and when they are needed. That was my first suggestion. Second suggestion.
That's point 1.
We should, as a beginning point, harness the outrage, the sentiments, and the power right now to gather people touched by violence in our schools, especially the high school and college students you talked about earlier, and their parents. We should hold a conference and invite politicians along with funders to discuss an immediate ban on assault weapons. Students can use social media to get their peers to register to vote. And they, with the right guidance, can kick people out of office and put people in office who are against giving out AR-15s, to anyone. My last comment. I'm willing to help with either or both of these initiatives, but let's stop giving the news and start with real can-do solutions.
Okay, thank you, sir. No, I thank you, sir, and I'm agreeing with you, and that's why I'm here. This is the town meeting form of communication that we pretty much invented, and the reason I'm here is to be educated by you, but in turn to tell you what is going on down in Washington and what the obstacles are to making the rest of the country more like us in terms of our attitude towards climate, towards gun control, towards protecting health care for seniors and for everyone else, for banning of assault weapons, for each and every one of your items. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. The problem is, and I say this only because he's a master, is that Trump is a master of distraction. He puts so many things out there each day that the press just goes for, that he's just a genius in creating red herrings that distract people from the central issues that should be debated in every single home in the country. So I'm agreeing with you, and just I'm going to try to get on this list. In 1994, I was successful in banning the 1 million semi-automatic assault weapons per year that were coming in from China at $80 a piece, and that ban is still in place. That was 1 million semi-automatic. That was my initiative in 1994. Number 2, I am the author of the Appliance Efficiency Act, which is the constitution for already doubling the efficiency of all appliances in the United States to reduce the number of coal-burning plants that actually have to be operating because they don't need to generate the electricity for appliances, which are twice as efficient. 3, I'm the author of the 2007 law that Obama used to increase fuel economy standards for the vehicles which we drive to 54.5 miles per gallon by the year 2025, reducing greenhouse gases. And that's the promise which Obama made in Paris to the rest of the world. It was appliance efficiency, it was auto efficiency, it was thinking smarter, not harder. I'm agreeing with you, sir.
And your reaction to the two suggestions?
I'm agreeing with you 100%. I'm with you. On AR-15s, AR actually doesn't stand for assault rifle, but that's what it really is. They have to be banned. They don't belong on the streets of our country. The people who are the criminals who should not have a higher degree of weaponry than the police department in Framingham has when they're walking into a bad situation. It is absolutely and completely wrong. I am agreeing with you 100%. So I subscribe to that agenda and the applause that you were receiving as you went through each item, up to and including the protection of our seniors and their healthcare system. Is absolutely essential. We have extended the Framingham Heart Study. The average life expectancy in 1900 in our country was 47 years of age. It's now pretty much 80 years of age, with women actually living longer. That's public health initiatives, including Medicare and Medicaid. We can't see them undermined. We have to actually see them strengthened. We should be putting more money into those programs to provide health care for everyone. Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I want to first thank you for coming.
If you can just speak up just a little.
I want to first thank you for coming to talk to us and listen to us. I thank you for all you have done in your career thus far and for all you're going to do for us in your career. But most of all, I want to thank you for extending daylight savings time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. I moved, this is what, I have 508 laws. Well, one of them, I had to do it in 2 separate segments. I moved daylight savings time from the last week in April to the beginning of March, okay? So that in another 2 or 3 weeks, daylight savings time starts whenever it's an hour in the evening instead of at 5 in the morning. People's mouths, the corner of their mouths start to turn upwards. Okay? Because now they can walk around at night, and in fact, it actually reduces crime because bad people don't like to commit crimes while it is daylight. Okay, so thank you for that, because from my perspective, the whole world then had to change what they had for their system of time. I was the energy subcommittee chairman, and time came under that jurisdiction as a kind of a bonus. So I decided to move time and actually put an extra week after Halloween so that people could take their kids out on trick-or-treat during the light in the early hours, especially the small children. So thank you for that. Yes, sir.
My name's Mitch Lappin.
Can you please speak up?
Sure. My name's Mitch Lappin from Natick. I have 2 rhetorical statements, more or less. The first one is, I like your approach to net neutrality.
Can you move it in a little bit closer?
I like your approach to net neutrality.
Thank you, sir.
Why not use that for gun control? And the second question, a second statement is, if we...
In a little bit closer.
If on the federal level we had binding referendums, all of us here could approach the gun control issue. Are you for, can you think of, an amendment to the Constitution that brings the country back to us?
You're saying referenda, yeah. So on gun control, it's overwhelming across the whole country. On background checks, on assault weapons, people want tight controls. This is no longer a debatable issue in the country. The only blockage is that Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan won't allow these votes to come out onto the floor of the Congress. So the referendum is going to be this November 4th, okay? And if we can sweep back with people who are just so upset with the totality of all of the programs which Trump has put in place, or the things that he's protecting against being changed, then you're going to see real change in our country. So, but it has to begin at the grassroots. It has to begin city by city, town by town, rising up, not just here, but across the country, red states included, and I think that change is now happening. And I'm agreeing with you that it is time for us to have a populist revolution in our country on guns right now. Yes, yes, sir.
Hello, Senator. Hello, Senator.
And can you move it in more closely, Nolan, closer?
Yeah, he's the one. I'm from the scenic town of Grafton. I am what you call a high-skilled immigrant. You talked about this being the brain state. We are the ones who are the best and brightest who have come to this brain state. We want to do stuff here. I'm also a proud master's graduate from Brandeis University. I hold a master's degree from technology management. I am here with a lot of high-skilled immigrant families at the back. We are all from India. We are stuck in a green card backlog which spans 70 plus years. Just because, for no fault of ours, just because we were born in India, we are stuck in this backlog. I hear you talking so much about reaching out to the other side of the aisle. We appreciate that. We need that kind of hope in this very partisan climate that we have today, and I appreciate that you're doing that. You have done that in the past. I have a request and an ask. My request to you is please think about us, keep us in mind, the high-skilled community who are stuck in this backlog with being able to do nothing. When you go talk about immigration on the floor there, please keep us in mind. There are people who are getting affected. The most egregious part is that kids, the dependent kids and the dependent spouses are treated pretty badly. No other developed country treats kids and spouses of high-skilled immigrants this way. Kids who will age out at the age of 21 and will be at a risk of getting deported, and spouses who are not allowed to work. No other developed country has this provision where spouses cannot work. President Obama brought in an executive action where they were able to resume their careers, but that's also up in the air right now. There are talks in the administration that might go away. While all this is rampant, we are marginalized, we are demonized, we cannot innovate, we cannot create any jobs. So my request to you is please think about us. My ask to you is, and it's going to be very quick, Senator Hatch has come out with a bill. It's called the Immigration Innovation Act. He also has amendments to those things for the immigration package that was being discussed last week. My ask for you is please look into it. It has provisions that protect U.S. workers' interests, but also provides relief for immigrants like us, eliminating country caps, giving work authorization to spouses, and a lot of other things. So please look into it. Please vote in favor of it.
What is your degree in, sir?
It's in technology management. It's a master's of science.
Okay,
Yep.
so what we need is for Senator Hatch, for Donald Trump to just say, let's have a complete, comprehensive immigration reform where your issues, the issues of the dreamers, the issues of those who need temporary protected status, those people from Haiti and El Salvador are also on the table, where the other 9 million immigrants, in addition to the 2 million dreamers, are also on the table, and your issues should be there too. And we could resolve these issues in a relatively brief period of time in a comprehensive way. But it's difficult when there's just an ideological agenda on a small part of it, because it makes it impossible then to step back and look at the totality of the strategy that we should have for our country. We need you in this country. We need your family in this country. We need your spouse in this country. And we need all of these other young people who are so talented in the back of the room in this country. But we also need people who might come from Brazil and who are right here as well and not as well educated and are afraid beginning on March 5th that a knock could come on the door in the middle of the night and just take them out of their home, take them out of their church, take them away from the park where they might have children playing and be sent back and out of our country. So we need it to be comprehensive. I'm with you, sir. I think we can do it, but we just need to continue to build this. Okay, I agree. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Over here, yes, please.
Hi, my name is Pamela Goodwin. I live in public housing.
Can in a little bit closer, Maureen?
I'm from the town of Upton, and I want to talk about public housing in the state of Massachusetts for a second.
Okay, please go ahead.
We residents are being overcharged rent. We are experiencing bullying on a steady basis. We have a procurement problem, which means that funds are given for renovations, construction, and sometimes they're not spent where they need to be. The oversight seems to be lacking from the Department of Housing and Community Development. Just this year, the DOR in Massachusetts has talked about confidentiality breaches.
In a little bit closer, please.
A lot of issues about breach of confidentiality. Some of the larger communities, Somerville, Quincy, Wellesley, Amherst, public housing is disappearing because larger groups are running in and they want to cancel the housing for public people and make more money. For instance, in Amherst, it was like more money from the students. I work with a group of people, we're all networking. We have some Board of Health issues, and Board of Health's local ones, mayors are turning a blind eye. I'm asking you to get a little involved in what's going on with public housing. I taught school for many years. I became a CNA. I sold my house, and now I'm in public housing. We network together, and we are I have 2 federal investigations now because I'm considered disabled, and there's massive retaliation. I'm working with Jim McGovern a little bit, and I know that Senator Michael Moore has also gone down into D.C., and he's concerned about elder abuse with, like in the private setting for CNAs and PCAs. So I'm just asking you to look into what else we can do. We would be thrilled if we could get the DOR more involved, for example.
And I will try to help you on that and learn more about it. And so if you could just step over here, I'm going to have Christina Pacheco, who is right back here, just begin the conversation with you so I can take action in coordination with you as soon as this meeting is done. Thank you for coming. Yes, sir?
Hi, my name's...
I'll tell you what, we started just a little bit late, but why don't we just... So my plan would be to end this at 5:30, and I will try to give briefer answers to each and every question. So please, go ahead, sir.
Okay, so my name's Jack. I live in Natick, and my question pertains to healthcare. And obviously, Obamacare made some improvements. There's better coverage of mental health, as you were saying, and more people are insured in general. But in my honest view, and in a lot of people's view, it maintains the most pervasive issue with American healthcare, and that it is a corrupt...
Can you move it in a little bit closer?
It is a corrupt free market system that allows pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies to arbitrarily raise prices in a manner that does not happen in any other industrialized nation. And my question is, do you think the Democrats can and will move towards a single-payer national health insurance plan and abandon Obamacare as it becomes politically viable?
Okay, well, I am a co-sponsor of Bernie Sanders' single-payer bill, so thank you for coming. In the near term, we have to stop Donald Trump from dismantling the Affordable Care Act as it exists right now. So we need to stop and then continue to advance, but in the same way that the young woman over here raised the issue about the increase in cost of MS drugs, you're raising a very similar question, and we have to do something about that in this country, and we have to do it whether or not we pass a single-payer bill or not. We just need a new system that does not allow for insulin drugs to go up from, let's just say for the sake of the discussion, $1,000 a year to $10,000 a year with no change in the technology in a 10-year period. So let me come back over here. All right, yes.
Thank you so much for coming, sir.
In closer, Rory, again.
Thank you so much for coming today, sir. My name is Noreen Bucchino, and I'm a nurse who's also a student at Quinsigamond Community College studying public health. My son is also a college student. My question today is not how you can help me, but what is the best way that I can help you? Several of us...
Okay. That's a good question.
Several of us have raised the issue about the gun situation in schools, and I would like to know, how can I support you in that venture?
Okay, that's a good question. We're in a very special place out here in Metro West, but Massachusetts in general. We are only 2% of America, but we're not an ordinary 2%. The American Revolution started right here in these communities. We were not happy with a tyrannical king, and we rose up. It was no taxation without representation, and we demanded that that happen. The abolitionist movement started right here in Massachusetts. The suffragette movement started right here as a revolution in Massachusetts. The Freedom Riders went from here down to the South to get voting rights for people from Massachusetts. The Affordable Care Act started here in Massachusetts. The gay marriage movement started here in Massachusetts. So you are the revolutionaries. You are the latter-day descendants of all these people who got up and took on hopeless causes that ultimately became the law of the United States of America. So what we have to do is just be more like we've always been. We go first. We put 180,000 people on Boston Common on the Women's March 1 year ago. We put 15,000 people in front of Faneuil Hall on the Affordable Care Act 1 year ago. We put 15,000 people in Copley Square 1 year ago on the Muslim ban. We just have to be us. We just have to stand up for the truth of what it is that makes our country great. So that's all I can really ask you to do, is just be more active, to use your online capacity to organize not just here, but across the whole country. You're no longer bound geographically. You can organize and you can ultimately create the counter-revolution which we are going to need. Because, by the way, on all these issues that we're talking about, there's one thing that separates us from Donald Trump. We are right and he is wrong. And we cannot allow for his ideas to become the law in our country. So I thank you, ma'am, and that's all I can really say to you. That's how you help, by just being active. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Senator Markey. I'm Nancy Ledoux from Newburyport.
Just a little bit closer, Nolan. Yeah.
Nancy Ledoux from Newburyport. And I'd like to add one more item to this agenda. There's a growing consensus that's building around getting money out of politics. And we heard from Senator Gillibrand and Senator Booker this week that they will no longer be taking PAC money, and I'm wondering where you and the delegation, our delegation, stands with that.
Well, I appreciate their position. Thus far, I'm going to stay with my existing policy, but I can reevaluate as I'm going down the line. But ultimately, hopefully, what will happen is this online revolution of contributions coming in, the way they did for Bernie, will supplant the existing financing system that we have for our campaigns in America. And that would be my sincerest hope, that that's the way it would work for all politicians, and that more people will use this capacity to disintermediate, that is, you go directly to the politicians and say that you want to contribute. And that's the only way we're ultimately ever going to be able to compete with the Koch brothers. The Koch brothers already said they're going to put $400 million themselves into this year's election cycle. So it's going to be critical for us to have the financing that allows us to get our message out as well. And ultimately, you know, we need campaign finance reform in our country. And the most important thing that we can do, is block any more Supreme Court nominees of Donald Trump, and then get Supreme Court justices that will overturn, with the exception of the Dred Scott decision, the worst decision in history, Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission. That is what is poisoning politics in America. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Victoria Butera. I'm from Brighton, and I'm an Alzheimer's advocate. I'm 25 years old, and I have not lost one, not two, but 3 grandparents to Alzheimer's.
But 3?
Yes, 3.
3 grandparents to Alzheimer's?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
This past summer, I watched my final grandparent, my grandmother Priscilla, suffer and pass from Alzheimer's disease. Currently, 5 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's, and 120,000 in Massachusetts alone. Alzheimer's really is a public health crisis, and I want to thank you for your help in support in advancing legislation that will benefit those living with this disease and their families. And thank you for signing the Bold Infrastructure for Alzheimer's Act. So my question is, will you keep supporting us?
Thank you for coming, and And thank you for talking about your 3 grandparents. Thank you. All had Alzheimer's. If we don't find a cure for Alzheimer's, 15 million baby boomers will have Alzheimer's if we don't find a cure. 15 million. It will be bigger than the entire defense budget by the time all the baby boomers have retired. That is, Medicare and Medicare will be spending more on baby boomers with Alzheimer's than the entire defense budget in our country. So, you know, my father drove a truck for the Hood Milk Company, but my mother was valedictorian of her high school class. She was president of the senior class, but my grandmother, her mother, died when my mother was a junior in high school. So before Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the social safety net was one of the girls are going to have to stay home. And there were 5 sisters, so my mother just stayed home. And she was a single mom raising her younger sisters, providing for them. So when she got married, she was like 37. My father was 34. She married the milkman. And I was raised in that house in Malden, the valedictorian and the milkman. When my mother got Alzheimer's, even though she used to do calculus for fun at the kitchen table, even though she never had it, to help my brothers and I learn trigonometry and calculus, she just figured it out at the kitchen table. We knew that we were not as smart as my mother. And when I actually said to my father, at one point, maybe 5 years into Alzheimer's, I said, Pup, what do you think about a nursing home? And my father said, Eddie, don't ever raise that issue again. It was an honor that your mother married me. It was an honor. She's never stepping foot in a nursing home. We're keeping her here in the living room. And so at age 80, 82, 84, 86, 88, 90, she stayed in the living room. And I learned a lot from my father through this whole process in Malden at 7 Townsend Street, what he was able to do. And the right arm of a milkman is twice the size of a left arm of a milkman, carrying those 6 milk bottles. But not everyone has the right arm of a milkman to take care of a family member that has Alzheimer's. They just don't. So we have to make sure that Medicare, Medicaid don't get cut on the one hand, so funding is there to help. And we have to make sure that we fully fund NIH so that we can find the cure. Because research is medicine's field of dreams from which we harvest the findings to give hope to families that we're going to find the cure for Alzheimer's and all these other diseases like the Framingham Health Heart Study help to show can happen if you focus upon it. So thank you for being here. Thank you for focusing upon this issue. And I'm glad you had your grandparents for as long as you did, that you got to know them. But it's important for us to help everyone have their grandmother and grandfather as long as humanly possible. And if we find the cure for Alzheimer's, that will be the case. Thank you so much for being here. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Senator Markey. As a citizen, I just want to thank you for your continuing support of progressive legislation, throughout your whole career. As the president of a local, a union local of about 1,000 members here in Massachusetts, I would like to know what we can do, all of us, including you and the Senate and the legislature, to support the cause of organized labor in this country and to continue the strength and autonomy of the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, and the NLRA, the National Labor Relations Act, which was passed in 1935. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, sir. My father was the president of a local union. His company went out of business. That's why he became a milkman. But he was the president of a local union. His right finger got cut off in an accident when he was a young man. He explained to me why then you had to work hard to pass OSHA to protect against industrial accidents, and many other things that he would explain to me at the kitchen table. So the foundation of the increase in wages for our country, of healthcare protections, of workplace protections, is the union movement. We have a very strong union movement here in Massachusetts. We prove that you can have a union movement and have great prosperity and give protections to every single family. So I am with you all the way. That is our job, to make sure that this goal, which they have to undermine the union movement, in the Trump White House is not successful. So I thank you. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Wiener. I'm a kidney doctor from Natick.
In a little bit closer again,
Sorry.
Rory. Yeah.
Dan Wiener. I'm a kidney doctor from Natick. I wrote a letter to you about 4 weeks ago or so about my concerns over something called the Dialysis Patients Demonstration Act, Senate 2065. Essentially, this looks really good. It has millions and millions of dollars of lobbyist money behind it. It seems anathema to everything that I've heard from you this evening or this afternoon. Essentially, it would consolidate the $35 to $45 billion a year that goes to the care of dialysis patients with two large for-profit companies, one of which at least has played very free and loose with regulations over time. I think most importantly, it would decrease patient choice, and it would incentivize dialysis corporations to get people onto dialysis and keep them on dialysis, and disincentivize the best treatment for them, which is kidney transplantation. So given the amount of money in this, how can we promote better health care among people with all chronic diseases without this huge for-profit incentive getting in the way of providing health care? Thank you.
Okay, well, single payer is one way, but a constant re-examination of what are the incentives that we're building into the healthcare system in general, and who we're giving those incentives to, are going to be essential for us to be able to deal with these issues. There's a limited amount of funding. We have to make sure that it's just not gobbled up by a small amount of the entire system, when we do know that if we work smarter and not harder and ensure that there was a fairer distribution, a better distribution of the resources in the healthcare system, that we could be successful. But I'll tell you what, my healthcare person is here tonight, and if you want to just stay around a few minutes, I'd like to talk to you a little bit more extensively about what you would like to see happen. So thank you, sir. Yes, sir, over here.
Good afternoon. My name is Oscar Landaverde. I work for Wayside Youth and Family Support. Wayside is an agency who works to improve family.
Move in a little bit closer?
Wayside is an agency who works to improve families and children's life. Through my years at Wayside, I noticed that the homelessness is being increasing in our community. And I would like to know how the government can help us to end less homelessness in our community.
Can you just repeat that question? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, homelessness.
Homelessness,
I'm
yes.
sorry. Homelessness. This goes to the public housing issue that was raised a little bit earlier, and that's part of the problem. One of the other problems is, and I learned this from my wife in the 1980s, when we decided to move in a direction of the deinstitutionalization of people in institutions in our country, we did not then simultaneously figure out how to fund the kind of programs, including housing, that would be available to them. So we reduced the cost in one end, but then we sent across the country, including Massachusetts, people who would need additional help, public housing help. That's one issue, and the homelessness in our country in many instances is accompanied by issues that are mental health, substance abuse, and other issues that we should also be trying to help to deal with. So I think that it would be great if the Trump administration was willing to increase and not decrease funding at the Department of Health and Human Services. The president named Ben Carson, a physician, as the head of HUD, but of course he didn't know anything about HUD before, housing and urban development, before he got the job. But central to it is ensuring that everyone has the dignity of housing, a dignity of where they can stay and call their home. And so we just have to, again, fight all of these cuts, but also broaden the vision for the totality of the programs that have to be in place in order to deal with homelessness in our country. I went and visited the Homeless Center for Veterans, which is in downtown Boston, about a month ago, and just walked around this wonderful facility which is there for veterans, and they supply help for hundreds of them, but they're doing that still only scratching the surface of what still is needed and across the whole state and the country. And so I'm with you 100%, and I thank you for raising the issue tonight. Yes, over here, we have 5 minutes left to go, and so I'll move as quickly as I can. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Gretchen Daggett from Waltham, and a issue I think is near and dear to your heart over the years is nuclear disarmament. And I haven't heard you speak about that, and how we could not only do something with our defense budget not to keep buying these things, but how do you stop Trump from pushing that button?
Okay, so thank you. That's a very good question. When Donald Trump talks about fire and fury in North Korea, when he leaves the impression that he would, in fact, engage in a preemptive nuclear strike against North Korea, he is bringing the world closer and closer, as the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists have done, is they've moved that clock closer to midnight than it's ever been in the history of that warning that comes from atomic scientists in our country. And so what I've done is introduce legislation that prohibits Donald Trump or any president launching a nuclear strike against another country if we have not been attacked by a nuclear strike from that country without permission and an actual vote of the House and Senate in the United States of America, which is the constitutional responsibility which we have. That's number one. Number two is that there is an insane increase in the number of nuclear weapons capacity, which is in this budget. They miniaturized the nuclear weapons. They increased the capacity to use nuclear weapons in a surgical strike against another country. That only puts the other country on a hair trigger. It only makes them more apprehensive that we might be able to strike them without any fear of their capacity to be able to retaliate. We just have to stop this. The higher we go, it's the higher they will go. The more that we think we can have a superior edge is the more that they will increase their nuclear weapons capacity as well, and that only brings us closer and closer to the moment where nuclear weapons become imaginable, where you can fight a winnable and survivable nuclear war. And a lunacy, a craziness then overtakes these nuclear strategists, where in fact it becomes possible that we could have this Armageddon-like moment. And thirdly and finally, Saudi Arabia now wants a new 1, 2, 3 agreement with us, which is that we will sell them nuclear technology. So I am going to insist on the floor of the United States Senate that every senator be put on record as to whether or not we want to take the Middle East as it is right now, and then add in, without full scope safeguards, Saudi Arabia also having nuclear power technology. They have more solar energy in Saudi Arabia than they know what to do with. They should be investing in that and not asking for uranium and plutonium that goes in without full scope safeguards into Saudi Arabia. On issue after issue, we have to protect against those catastrophic events. And yes, over here, and I will try to answer very quickly.
Helen Claire Severs, Sudbury. I'd like to revisit campaign finance reform. It seems to me, until you address that none of these other things are really going to get addressed because people are too beholden to these major donors. I used to donate to especially Senate candidates in other states, and then when I read the Mercers were coming in here to defeat Elizabeth Warren, I said no. I believe in representative government, and however much I may want to donate to Nevada, I'm not doing it because I think, and I would propose you think about this, that people only be allowed to donate to the people who directly represent them. For example, you could vote for your representative to the Congress, to your 2 senators, and to presidential candidates, and it should be a fixed amount, $2,500, whatever you're going to fix, and nobody else can. No union, no PAC, no company, no corporation, no nothing, only individuals.
Okay, you know what? We need to overhaul the entire campaign finance system in this country. Citizens United has just led to a pollution of the political process across the country that is a threat to democracy as it should exist. I'm agreeing with you. We need to just go back and re-examine all of it. But you know what we need? We're going to need to block right-wing, as Mitt Romney said when he was running for president, the corporations are people too in terms of their ability to influence elections. So we need to win in this November and then elect a Democratic president who will name the Supreme Court justices who can begin to roll back the absolute compromise of democracy in our country that Citizens United has made possible when unlimited, undisclosed amounts of money are able to flow into the political process. We have a crisis on our hands. So I'm going to only be able to answer this question and this final gentleman's question over here. And if any of the rest of you want to have a conversation with me, I will stick around for a while and try to answer your questions. Yes, sir.
My name is Bob Leggett from Sudbury. I'm a Vietnam-era veteran, and I'm concerned about the lack of integrity in our system of voting. In 2016, Republicans won the presidency by a mere 70,000 votes, or 1.8% of the votes in the swing states of Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Chris Kobach, who, as you know, is the Attorney General of Kansas and was the vice chair of the now defunct Voter Integrity Commission, admitted to illegally purging millions of voters from the voting rolls through the interstate cross-check program used by over 30 states. In Michigan, he won by a mere 10,704 votes, and yet over 70,000 votes were never counted. And in Pennsylvania, they use only electronic voting machines that are prone to hacking and are totally unauditable. Since fair and accurate voting is critical for a functioning democracy, would you be willing to introduce a bill requiring paper ballots and effective procedures, voting procedures for chain of control and auditing?
You know, if we said that 10 years ago, it would have sounded crazy, but no longer, okay, in terms of protecting the integrity of the political process. When Donald Trump has a whole plan in place where he wants every Secretary of State in the country to send all the voting records of every voter to the White House for his examination, and to Billy Galvin's credit, he said, no way are the voters of Massachusetts voting records going to the White House. When the president continues to deny the influence of the Russians, you know, compromising the election of 2016 at a presidential level, and we know that it was also happening in time periods before that, then we have a real problem in our country. I think one of the things that's going to happen is that we have to protect Robert Mueller. We have to make sure he doesn't get fired. We have to understand everything that happened in our election in 2016. That is why people rose up here in 1775 and 1776, so that we could have no foreign imposition of our selection of who our leaders are. But these machines increasingly become questionable in terms of their ability to be able to protect against them being compromised. So as time goes on here, that simple way of just voting with a paper ballot looks like the greatest protection that we can have, unless and until we ensure that we have machines that can't be compromised, and cyber technology can, of course, be attacking many of these technologies on an ongoing basis. We know the Russians are going to continue. The president continues to avoid the fact that if the Russians had attacked us with military, then we would expect a response the same way that John F. Kennedy or any other president would have responded, the Bay of Pigs. So that's the question that I have as well. Representative Dykma, Danielle, Carolyn, thank you for coming. Thank you for staying all like two great two great state representatives. I very much appreciate your being here. So I am with you. We cannot allow for a compromise, and I'm going to start to consider what you just said about paper ballots, because if we cannot guarantee the fundamental right of people to vote without being compromised, then we do not have a democracy. Final question over here.
Thank you, Senator Markey. Bill Bloomsack from Framingham, and the audience will be happy to know this does not require any response. I consider myself an average American, high school, college, military service, and then worked pretty much on my own to make a good living. Having said that, if I lied to my customers, if I bull blank my customers, I did what they hired me for, and I made sure I was honest. When I served in the military, I did it with a Congress at that time I had respect for. As an American, I am proud to be an American. I am embarrassed with the Congress I have, totally. And when I say Congress, I'm including everybody. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm unenrolled in Massachusetts. All I know is, all I hear constantly is the blame for the NRA, the blame for the mental health, the blame for DACA, always blaming somebody else. If I was in business, as long as I was for 40 years, and I'll use your term, and I did what is happening today, I would be out of business. I would have been fired. And I think it is a disgrace for me as an American, or myself as an American, to have to deal with all the crap and the blaming. There is only one group to blame, and that is Congress, period.
Okay, well, I thank you, and I won't take it as a rhetorical question. I will just respond by saying that we prove here in Massachusetts, with a Republican governor and a Democratic legislature, that people can work across the aisle. And that's how I want it to be down in Washington. But when people deny climate science, when they want to abolish the Affordable Care Act, when they don't want any gun control laws at all to go on the books after massive numbers of killings at schools all across our country, that's not who we are in Massachusetts. So believe me, I work very hard to try to find, on a bipartisan basis, people who I can work with on those issues. And there are issues on which I can work with other people who are Republicans. But on the issues that we're talking about here tonight, and the ones that I think are of most concern to people who are in this audience, it requires people to cross the aisle. And the president is, thus far, someone who has decided to poison the political process. He did that just by beginning this birther movement, questioning whether or not Obama was actually born in the United States of America. It continues to polarize along racial lines, along gender lines. It's not necessary. I actually passed a bill 3 weeks ago, and the president signed it, and I stood next to him, and it's a bill that's going to provide the funding for the detection of fentanyl, which is the principal killer now in the opioid epidemic. 80% of all people dying in Massachusetts have fentanyl in their blood system. So I was able to get a bill passed which is going to purchase devices that can detect fentanyl through packaging along our borders and in our communities. And I signed the bill, and President Trump signed the bill and gave me the pen that he used to sign the bill 3 weeks ago. That is the way in which the system is meant to work. And I can tell you, I tried hard on opioids to do it, and I'm going to try hard for you on every other issue as well. I thank you all, Metro West, for everything that you stand for, and I thank you for coming here tonight and being the great people you are. Thank you. And by the way, thank you to David Linsky. Thank you, Carmen, for being here, to Senator Spilka, and to Mayor Spicer, your great new mayor of Framingham. Thank you all so much for all being here.
you.